Now, if you've ever wanted to create your own blog using WordPress but weren't quite sure how to start or how to set everything up, this video is going to be perfect for you. In just over 1 hour, I'm going to show you all the different steps you need to get everything set up. We're going to deal with the hosting, domain registration, security, backups. We're also going to take a look at installing WordPress, installing our theme and customizing it, adding content, and finally we're going to take a look at how fast this actual website is. And a quick disclaimer, it's very, very fast, straight out the box with minimal optimization. We're going to be using Hostinger as our hosting platform, who've kindly sponsored this video. As always though, there's no opinions. I'm simply going to demonstrate how everything works so you can make an informed decision for yourself. Now, if you want to save a little bit of money on Hostinger, there's a discount code in the description below. You can use that and save yourself some cash on the deal that we're going to be using in this video. Okay, so now we've taken a look at those settings. What are we actually going to build? Well, this is an example of the website we're going to be creating. We've got a custom hero section. We've got a custom homepage with our blog posts on. We can click and go and take a look at the post itself, which is again customized. Scrolling on down, we've got full sharing options so you can share any content. We've got the related posts option so we can easily jump around our blog and find exactly what we want. We've got a navigation setup with custom sections inside here. We can jump around to any of these and go and take a look at more content. Now, while this is focused around architecture, your blog can be on anything, and the skills you're going to cover in this video will cover any kind of blog you want to create. Okay, so now that we've seen everything, we're going to take a look at how you go ahead and start building this. So let's move on to that in this first step. Now, the first thing we're going to need to do is get a domain and set up our hosting. Now, for this, we're going to be using Hostinger in today's video, who've kindly sponsored this video. Now, as always, with any sponsored content, there's no opinions. I'm simply going to demonstrate how to set things up, the options we have available that we're going to use in this tutorial, and then you can make a more informed decision for yourself. There will be a link in the description to find out more about Hostinger, the pricing and what they offer if you want to check it out. So we jump onto the Hostinger website. You can see we've got hosting starting at X price. Now, what we want though is we want to hop over to the WordPress based hosting because this is more geared towards working with WordPress websites. We're going to have some beneficial features and also the ability to quickly install WordPress in a matter of seconds. Great when you want to install your site and you want to get things up and running as quick as possible. If we scroll down a little bit, you can see we have currently 3 different pricing plans starting at $259 per month. Let's take a look at the features underneath, and this is where you're going to go through and choose the right hosting account, the right hosting plan for you. So you can see based upon the different plans, they start off with a lot of very similar options. The number of websites, 100 or 300, your performance, the number of backups, the amount of storage space you've got, and then you've got things like email, SSL, bandwidth limits, and so on. So you need to just quickly go through, take a look at what options are available, and pick the plan that works the best for you. We're going to choose this middle option, which is the $399 business plan, which is their most popular because this gives us a free CDN. We've got backups, we've got unlimited emails and SSL certificates and all those kinds of good things. Things that we would normally have to pay for, which will be included as part of this plan. And if we're happy with everything, we can simply go ahead and add this to our cart. Now at this point, you can see this is going to give you a complete overview of the pricing structure and how long you have to be on any of these plans to get the best pricing. So you can see if you go for the 48 months, this is going to give you that $399 per month. And also make sure that you use the exclusive discount code of WPTuts during checkout to make sure you can get an even better deal. So we'll hit apply, and that will update and give us the overall pricing. For example, I'm going to be using PayPal to pay, so I'm simply going to go ahead and I'm going to pay for this, and then we'll take a look at the actual dashboard that we have once your account has been created and you've gone ahead and you've confirmed everything. So the emails you'll get sent to confirm your order. Now, once you've set your account up and everything is up and running, you can log into your dashboard and you're going to be presented with this. Now, the first thing we can do based upon the plan that you've chosen, you can claim a free domain. So if you want to grab that, you can simply hit the claim domain option. We'll do exactly that and we'll grab ourselves a domain we can work with. We can choose between various different top level options. We're going to go for a .com in this example, and we're just going to do a search for a domain that we'd like to use. I'm going to search for this domain. We'll check availability. And as we can see, that is available to us. So all I need to do is claim that domain. You can see it tells us how much this renews for and when it'll renew. So we're going to click claim domain. And now we have our free domain pending setup. So all we need to do now is go ahead and set up that domain. So what we can do is we can click on the arrow. This will then take you over to confirm the profile you want to use with your account, which is normally a case of what's associated with your actual hosting account itself. Provided that's all correct and that's what you want to use, you can click on Finish Registration. Alternatively, if you want to add a new profile, you can do that and add in your new details. I'm happy with the options we have here, so I'm going to say Finish Registration, and that will then go ahead and register that domain for me, and then I can start using that, building a new website. So we're almost there. We just need to wait for this to actually go through and confirm, and we'll just click on Continue, and we will wait for that to actually complete. And there we go. That's now set everything up for us. And as you can see, the status is active. The email verification has been verified. It tells us when this is going to expire. If we want to transfer it somewhere else, we can grab the authorization code. And it also gives us the name servers that have been set up to connect this domain to our hosting account on Hostinger. So basically, we're halfway there already. So while we're in the domain management area, we need to go ahead now and connect that new domain app to our hosting account. At the moment, we have the domain, we have the hosting account, but they're not connected to each other. All we need to do is come up to the top and it says connect your website to your hosting plan. If you remember when we took a look at purchasing, we can have a number of websites associated with our hosting plan depending upon what plan we've chosen. So let's go ahead and say connect your website to your hosting plan. Then we can go through this simple wizard to say what type of website we are going to create, or if we want to, we can just skip it and just go straight to doing everything manually. For this example, let's just say we're going to set this up for a business website. It says, are we going to create a website, or do we want to migrate one we already have that exists? In this example, we're going to start completely from scratch. So we're going to click on the select option. Then it's going to ask us what platform do we want to use. Do we want to use WordPress, which is what we're going to do, or do you want the built-in hosting builder with the AI feature? For our example, we want to use WordPress. So all we're going to do is select that. And now we can go ahead and we can set the basics up. And this will automatically install and set everything up for us with WordPress. So we're doing everything in a nice, simple fashion. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop in our relevant details. We're going to add in our administrator password. We'll click on Generate Password. You can see this is already matching up to the 6 different parameters that we have to make sure we've got a detailed password. Now we're going to say Continue, or we can say Skip and create an empty website. Let's click on Continue and see what options we have. So now you can see we can choose what options do we want to install. Are we creating a WooCommerce store? Do we want to add that in? Do we want to add in some other plugins? For this example though, we don't want any of these. So we're just going to click on Continue. And now what we can do is we can pick from a theme we may want to use. And if we click to show more, you can see this will expand out. We can choose things like generate, press, and so on. For this example, we're going to skip this because we'll do everything manually so I can demonstrate how all of that is done. So you're not tied into specifically working with this kind of setup. We'll say skip, I don't need a template. And now what we can do is we can add in some content if we want to using AI. So for our example, we're going to be working with our architecture-based business. This is using ChatGPT, so I put my brand name in and also put a basic description of what my architect business is all about. Let's click on Continue, but if you want to, you could just easily skip this and write your content later. Let's have a bit of fun and see how this looks. So we'll click on Continue. We'll choose our domain, so if you have more than one domain, you can choose the correct domain. And this will then go through a little sort of notification thing of different things you can do with your account while it sets everything up for us. So this should take no more than a couple of minutes, and you can see it's going to put the SSL certificate installed for us. Everything is going to be done behind the scenes for us, so we don't have to worry. And if we're collaborating with people, we can use the collaboration options as part of your hosting or account to be able to easily give access to your co-workers or clients and things along those lines. And there we go. After a few moments, that's now set everything up for us. And we can choose now whether we want to start editing our website or we want to jump back into our hosting control panel. Now, before we take a look at actually editing the website, let's just hop back over into our control panel and set a few other things up that are going to be kind of useful with our website as we move forward. Now, as you can see inside our dashboard for this specific domain, it gives us an overview of information, so what type of web hosting we're currently on, our domain that we're currently using, whether we've set up our free email accounts, and any kind of backups we have set up. Now, we've got the SSL certificate and those kinds of things already done for us, but it makes sense at this point to go ahead and set up our backups. So to do that, we can simply click on Manage under Daily Backups. And now we can go ahead and we can set things up. So let's click on the setup option, and that's basically it. We've now set up our daily backups. And if at any point you want to restore your website, run a manual backup if you want to, so you can generate a new backup, or you can restore your files and or your database, you can do that inside here. And you've also got your restore history as well. So let's just generate a new backup before we do anything to our website, so we can always restore it back to this initial starting point. So we'll click on Generate a New Backup. We'll say proceed, and you can see this will start generating a new backup of your current files and database. Keep in mind, you can only generate one backup every 24 hours, so it's always worth bearing that in mind. But it's a good point to do this now because we can have this backup and we've got our completely clean install. So we can complete hash of our website, we can come back and we can automatically restore it directly from here in a matter of seconds. So as you can see, all we need to do is click on Restore Website, and then any backup we've got will be listed. So there's our backup. We can select it, and we can go ahead and we can restore it from here if we wanted to. Really simple to do. So before we close out this and start building things, let's take a quick tour of the dashboard, because there's some useful features inside here that is worth bearing in mind that you can use directly inside your hosting or account. First of all, we've already seen how the daily backups work, and we've set that up. We also have a file manager, a database manager, and a WordPress overview. If we open up the file manager, this takes you into an online version of seeing all of the files you have on this particular website. So if you open up the public HTML folder, you can see inside here are all of the files that are associated with your copy of WordPress. If you need to make a change to something, you can access that and do it directly inside your hosting panel. You also have the ability to work with the database. So if we click on the database option, this will show you any or all of the databases you have, and you can, if you want to, enter phpMyAdmin, and you can edit and manage your databases. Probably above what we wanted to cover in this video, but it's good to know that they're here, so as your skills and your confidence improves, you can have access to this, and if you want to do it, it will be done inside here. Also, if we come into the left-hand side, you can see we have a selection of different options. If we open up, for example, WordPress, you can see we've got the ability to get an overview of our WordPress setup. If you are updating your site and you don't want people to get access to it, you can drop your site into maintenance mode. You can see we have light speed, so this is going to improve the speed of your website. This is enabled by default, but then there's object caching and so on. So depending upon the plan that you have, you'll have a different range of features available inside here. You can see the SSL certificate is active, and if we want to find any information about that, we can do that. And if we want to install another copy of WordPress, we can do that inside here as well. And we can find some basic information out about our site. So we can see the database name, the daily backup, whether that's enabled, what version of PHP we're running. So if you ever asked, the information inside here, and the same goes for your WordPress version. So there's some useful features inside here, and depending upon the plan, you may have staging, additional security options, and so on and so forth. If you come into your hosting section, there's your plan details, and this will give you a total overview of your account, the resources you have available, and all those kinds of useful pieces of information. So it tells you your website address, the IP address associated with it, the hosting details, how much space, RAM, those kinds of things you have, and then some more important information like the name servers that are being used and so on. So if you need that information, it's all available inside here. And you can also take a look at your resource usage to find out how much any site is actually taking up. So if you have multiple sites on your account, you can see which are the ones that are taking up the most resources and make changes should you need to. So that's the basics of what you can do inside your hosting accounts. And now we have our website set up, our security is in place, our backups are in place. We're ready to move on. So now we've got the hosting and the domain registration, and everything is basically set up. We're ready to move on now and start actually going ahead, customizing and building our blog, our website. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and log into our dashboard. We're going to do that from the hosting panel. We're going to simply come into our websites. This will list all of the websites that we currently have and any of the domains. We're going to simply go ahead and click on Edit Website. That will now redirect us and log us into our dashboard. So the first thing you'll notice is we've got all of this stuff all over our dashboard, and it's not really the nicest thing to look at. So let's clean that up first. This is super easy. All we need to do is go to the screen options in the top right-hand corner, and we can uncheck any or all of these different items. For this, we're going to get rid of everything right now, just so you've got a nice, clean dashboard to start working with. None of those horrible distractions slapped all over the place. Next, we've got a couple of plugins that we don't really want to use. We're going to come into plugins and installed plugins, and now we can get rid of anything we want. Now, the most important thing here is if something is installed and activated, you need to deactivate it before you delete it. So you can see we've got a couple of plugins that are white backgrounds, and these are basically plugins that are not active. The ones that have the blue background are active. So what we're going to do is we don't want to use all-in-one WP migration, Hostinger, or the WP forms. So we're simply going to go ahead, select those by checking the boxes, come into the actions underneath or above. Doesn't really matter which way you do this. It's exactly the same. And what we're going to do is we're going to say deactivate and click apply. And now what we can do is we can get rid of anything we don't actually want. So let's select all of these uncheck the Lightspeed cache because we want to keep that just to make sure our site is nice and fast. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come to our bulk actions one more time, and we're simply going to come to the option for delete and click apply. We'll click OK to confirm that we're happy with that, and that will then get rid of all of those extra options. Now let's just quickly refresh our page, and you can see all we have now installed is the Lightspeed cache. Now, we need to have a little bit of content on our website just so we can see the changes that we're making. So if we come into the post section and come into all posts, you can see inside here, I've got a couple of posts automatically being added in. This is just basically filler text, nothing special, but it means we've got some content. You can leave those or you can delete them and start putting your own content in right off the bat if you want to. I'm going to leave them in here for now just so we've got some filler content to see the changes in real time and have something to actually view them. And the same thing may come in when you take a look at pages. Inside there you may have, depending upon how things are set up, you may have some filler content. But as you want to create content and new pages, you'll add them inside here. And we will add in a custom page a little later in this video. Next up, just make sure that we've got anything to do with our settings configured the way that we need. So we're going to come into the settings section, start in general. This is where we can set our website's title. So you may want to change this to something more in keeping. We're going to call this the architect blog. Your WordPress address and site address, you'll see these are set up automatically. In this example, because we're using a secure site, we want to make sure that these are set up correctly. So if you just see HTTPS and you've enabled that SSL certificate like we saw in the previous section, we're simply going to update this to HTTPS and HTTPS for the second one. And when we save that, we'll be logged out and then we can log back in and we'll have everything set up. It is already secure, but this just means that everything is set up the way we need it inside WordPress itself. Next up, we have membership, and this allows us to say whether we want people to be able to register for our site. So if you want to allow comments, you'll probably want to have people to register so you don't get bombarded with loads of spam and junk. You can just simply enable this option and then people can register and sign up. In this example, I don't want that. I don't want to have people commenting and so on, so I'm going to leave that disabled. If you do enable this though, you'll see we've got the new user default role. And if we open that drop down list, you can see we've got 5 different roles that are default as part of WordPress. I would highly recommend you leave this set to subscriber if you want people to be able to register. That way, anybody that registers will have the lowest level of access. They can't change anything on your website. They can simply do things like add comments and so on. And then if you want to upgrade someone to become an editor or an author or so on, so you want multiple people to actually contribute on your website, you can change them on a single instance basis. Next up, we've got the site language. This is set to English UK in my example, and that's perfectly fine, but you can change that should you need to. And we've got things like time zones, dates and times and so on. So if you want to change these, you can do that here. I'm not going to do that. We're going to click on Save Changes. That will log me out, so I'm now booted out of the website because we've made that change to be HTTPS. All we need to do is log back in. And there we go, logged back in. All we're going to do, come back into the settings. This time we're going to jump into the writing section. And this is where you can set up things like the default post category, the default post format and so on. We're going to leave all those as they are. We don't need to worry about those. We hop into reading. This is where you can set up some basic parameters, but again, we don't really want to worry too much about this. What I do want to draw your attention to is the search engine visibility. Now, if you are creating a website and it's not going to launch straight away, the last thing you want is your search engines to start finding the pages and posts you put on there, start indexing them, and that could be a little bit problematic because this content you don't necessarily want to have online. You can check this box, hit the save changes, and then the search engines will be discouraged from finding the content on your website. Then when you're ready to launch with the content and you want those search engines to find it, uncheck that, hit the save changes, and then it will start to be available to index on the search engines. Again, if this is something you're not too sure of, if you're working on your website to create content and you don't want to launch straight away, enable this and save it, and then when you're ready to launch, disable it, resave it, and the search engine can start finding. Next up, we've got discussion. So if you want to allow people to add comments and things onto your blog, you can just make sure you set up a few of the different parameters like attempting to notify blogs with a link to the post and different things like that. We're going to just uncheck all those options because I don't want those to be available. And we're simply going to come down and we're going to click on Save Changes. But again, you can configure this to the way that you want it if you want to allow people to add comments onto your website. You've got things like media then, which allow us to customize the various different sizes that are created whenever it uploads an image. We're going to leave that. Permalinks is an important thing. Now, this is one of the things, if you do nothing else on your website in the settings and everything, you do need to come into your permalinks and change one thing. By default, you get this really ugly looking URL, the link that actually links to any of the posts or pages on your website. And that's really not very nice. It's not very human readable. We're going to change this to be post name. And that's all you really need to do. And then we're going to get a much nicer URL that's easy for people to read and share. So simply come in your permalink structure, set it to be post name, and simply go ahead and click on Save Changes. That's all you need to do there. And that is one thing you absolutely need to do on every time you install WordPress. Okay, so there's the basic settings all set up, ready now to move on to the next stage. So now we've laid the groundwork, we're now ready to move on to the more fun stuff, which is starting to get a little bit more creative. But first, we need to go ahead and install the theme that we're going to be using for this video. So let's go ahead, hop over into the Appearance section and open up Themes. And you can see by default we have one or more themes already pre-installed for us. We're not going to be using any of these. We're going to be using the free version of Bloxy. This is a great solid foundation that allows us to create a blog super quickly. It's well optimized and a great starting point for building your website. So let's go ahead and click on Add New and simply come to the top right hand corner and search for Bloxy. And there's the theme. So all we need to do is click Install. And once that's installed, we're going to click Activate. And that's then going to tell us we need to install the Bloxy companion. This just opens up some extra functionality that we absolutely want to tap into. So we'll click Install Bloxy companion, and that will now take us into Bloxy itself. Before we take a look at that, let's just do a little bit of cleaning up. Let's hop back into the Appearance section, back into Themes. And because we're using the Bloxy theme, we don't need these other themes installed. So we can go ahead and we can click on the theme details and then go and click on Delete. Confirm. And that will remove it. I'm going to do the same now for the other themes, and we'll just end up with only Bloxy installed. And there we go, back onto Bloxy. Now, it makes sense to get rid of these other themes because we just end up with files taking up space on our server that we don't actually need, including things inside our database, which could potentially slow things down. And we don't want that. Now we've got the Bloxy theme installed, let's head over into the Bloxy entry. First up, we have the Home section, and this is where you can jump into the customizer and straight into any of the 6 options we have presented to us right here. We're not going to worry about those right now because we're going to jump into the customizer in the next section anyway. Then you have starter sites, and these are pre-built sites using Bloxy and sometimes some third-party plugins, generally free plugins, to create starter sites based upon a particular different kind of category. For example, photography studio or restaurant or a sort of carpenter, those kinds of things. And you'll hover over, it'll tell you what tools are available to work with it. So if you wanted to work with Gutenberg or Elementor, this one actually works with those. If you want to take a preview of what this actually looks like, you can click the preview. This will open things up, and you can then just have a little dig through to see exactly how this is all set up, all the different kinds of pages, and get some inspiration for the types of designs you could create using the Bloxy theme. Next up, we have extensions, and these are broken into 2 different parts. We've got free extensions, which we can install and work with the free version, or pro extensions, which requires you to upgrade to the pro license. The one that I think is probably one of the most useful is the product review. So if you're creating a reviews-based website and you want to link off to maybe your sort of affiliate links, and you want to have reviews and scores and ratings and feature requests and all those kind of things, the product reviews is probably going to be a good option. You can activate it and all those functions will be built directly into Bloxy. No additional third-party tools required. You also have pro extensions, which will show you all of the different pro paid extensions that you'll get access to if you upgrade to the pro version of Bloxy. We're not going to touch upon any of those in this particular video, but you can take a look if you want to find out more. Then we've got things like useful plugins, which are third-party plugins that they recommend, and the changelog, which basically just shows you what's been upgraded, fixed, and so on. We don't need to worry about those. So that's the basics of this particular section. It's always worth coming in here, seeing what's available, and if you want to add things in, enable them, you can do that. So let's kick this section off by taking a very quick look at what we've got to start off with on the actual website itself. So this is where we are right now. You can see we've got a couple of blog articles, a title. We don't have a menu created. We have a header, a footer. And if we go in and take a look at any of these, we've got a basic starting point. You know, it's a blog. It's just not particularly Great. So what we need to do, come back into our dashboard and we're going to open up the customizer. To do that, come into Appearance and come into Customize. This will then show us the home page generally, and then all the options we have available to customize pretty much all the aspects we can do inside the free version. And there are an awful lot of options inside here. The thing I want to do right at the beginning though is come down to the bottom and we can switch between dark mode and light mode. I just prefer dark mode, so I'm going to select that and that just makes it look a little nicer. So if we take a look at the left-hand side, you can see there's an awful lot of options. They're broken down into very logical stages. For example, you've got your general options for your general, your header, your footer, your sidebars, your colors, and so on. Then we can edit our post types, so our blog posts, the archive page, and the single post page, and so on. Then we've got pages, author pages, and search pages, which we can customize. And we can also do things like customizing the site identity, the menus, the widgets. And if we want to, we can add our own additional CSS in. So we've got more than enough inside here to really start to customize every aspect of this design. So first of all, let's hop into the general section and just tweak a few things to get it where we want it to be as a starting point. If we open up the general section, we can choose the additional options we now have. So we've got layouts, buttons, and so on. We open up the layout option, we can adjust the width of the site, the content area, the narrow container max width, and the alignment offset. So these are all things that we can do to edit the size of the various different parts of our design. You'll also notice if we come over pretty much anywhere inside the main window, we'll get a highlight box and it'll tell us what it is we could actually edit. So for example, the main row is to do with our header. We can edit the main content area. If we scroll down to where the footer is, you can see we can edit that. If we choose any of these, for example, click on main row, that will immediately take us into that relevant section in the customizer itself in Bloxy, and then we can start to customize any aspect we want of this. It's very, very intuitive to work with. So even if you are new to working with WordPress and this kind of feels a little bit daunting, hopefully what you can see is it's been made in such a way that it is pretty simple to get started. Let's come back out of here, back into the main section. Let's take a look at things like the option for colors. You can see here we've got a global color palette. And if you take a look, this will show you all the colors. So things like we've got our color 1, color 2, and these are basically global colors that we can access and set up where we want. So this is the color palette. If we take a look underneath, you can see this is where we can change the colors based upon that color palette for various different parts of our design. If we click on the little option, there's our color palette, you can see, which is replicated at the top. We can now choose any of those colors. You can obviously choose any color you want from the entire color spectrum, but I would always recommend set up a global color palette or use one of the pre-built ones. Then you have consistency of color throughout everything, as opposed to trying to remember what color did I use here? What color reference was it? And you're jumping back and forth. It all becomes a little bit problematic and not the best way of working. So before we change any colors, let's take a look at the color palettes. Now this is the default. We can click and there are a lot of other color palettes inside here, 15 in this example. And we can change any of these colors if we want to. So let's say we want to choose this color palette. We'll select it and now our colors change. And you can see anywhere that references these colors, the navigation menu option at the top, the footer, the links, and so on, all these will update accordingly. If you want a dark mode, you can see we've got dark mode options inside here as well. So you've got more than enough color palettes to choose from. But if you want to change any, you simply click on the color and you change it to whatever you want. So if you create your own custom color palette, you can easily update things inside here to get exactly what you want. For example, though, we're going to simply come back up and we're going to choose palette number 4, a nice mix of pale grays, and blues, and a kind of reddish color. So this is our starting point. And if we want to change anything, we can do that here. The same goes for our headings, the site background, all those are totally changeable. But I'm happy with that color palette, so let's come back out. Let's take a look at our typography options next, because typography is a key thing that you want to be aware of when you're working with any kind of design. Now at the moment, this is using the system fonts, and we can change these to use additional fonts. So we can click and you can see we've got Arial, Verdana, Trebuchet, and so on. These are system fonts, so we can choose any of these and you'll see that will update in real time to change to anything that we want. Now, you are not limited to this. You can, if you want to, use additional ones that are basically Google fonts. But if you do use any Google fonts, you do need to understand there are implications to working with that. So we're going to stay away from those, and we're simply going to use system fonts that pretty much everybody's computer will have installed. So we have no problems with that. We'll leave that as it is. And if you want to change the size, you can change the size inside here, the line height, the letter spacing. You can change whether you want things to be capitalized, uppercase, strike through, underlined, and so on. And you can change the weight inside here to any of these options. You can see if we change things, they update in real time on our page itself. We're going to set things back to regular, so they're the standard. But if you want to change them, you can change them. And again, you can come down underneath. You can see we can change things for buttons, quotes, pull quotes, pre-formatted, and we can set any fallback font we want. Then we've got some performance options. So if you open this up, we can go ahead and we can tweak things to make sure that we optimize our site. This is what I would recommend leaving as the default, but if you want to enable or disable any of these, you can do by simply using the little check option, and that will update things accordingly. But I found you get pretty decent results straight out of the box by just leaving the default values inside there. Okay, so that's the basic starting point. We've got so many more things we can customize inside here, but we want to put a couple of things in first. At the moment, we have no images to be able to reference. So I'm going to drop a couple of images into our sample posts, and then we're going to start to customize things to get the look that we want. So all I'm doing to add some images in is simply coming into the all posts section, opening up any of my posts, coming over to the right hand side where it says featured image, click to set a featured image, choose an image from my media library and set featured image, and then just simply go ahead and click on update. And again, if we take a quick look, you can see this is what we are starting off with. And now things already look a little better because we've got some images, but we do need to go ahead and customize this to see exactly what we want. So we're going to go back into the customizer, under appearance, and customize. So there's our homepage, and now we can start to customize things. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down to the post type section, and you can see we've got blog posts, single post, and categories. Now single post is if we click on one of these images, you can see this will take us into the single post template. And now if we make any changes to the single post layout, by clicking here, you can see we've got all design options and so on. That will affect all of the individual post layouts. So for example, let's just say we wanted to change the look of this. We wanted to make it a narrow version. We can click on the narrow option. We want to make it wider. We can click on the wide option. You can see that gives us the wider version. We can click on the right sidebar to include a sidebar on the right hand side. You kind of get the idea where this is coming from. We're going to set this back to be narrow width. Now underneath, we've also got additional options. So we can set this to be wide, which is what it is at the moment. So it takes the full width up, or we can click on boxed and we get this kind of boxed effect where we've got a white background that stands off the pale gray background or whatever color choice you've made. So you can also then go in and change things based upon the device. So you can check what it looks like on devices. So we can click over to tablet, for example, set this to be wide. Click over onto mobile, and we can set this to be boxed. And as we switch back, you can see we get the slightly different designs on each one of these. I'm going to set everything back to wide though, just to make sure it looks the way that I like it. We're going to worry about content spacing and so on a little later. We'll come back to those. Now underneath, we can enable and disable various different parts of this particular page's design. So we've got the featured image, for example. So at the moment, we only have the text on here, which doesn't look particularly great. Let's enable the featured image. And that now puts the featured image into the design. So it already looks much better. But anywhere you see this little pop-out arrow, we've got even more customization options. So let's click on there. And now we can configure how we want the image to look. So for the moment, you can see we've got this set to be original ratio. We can click on there and we can choose original, predefined, and pull it from a range of different predefined design sizes. So for example, 1:1, which will make it square, a 4:3, which is a more traditional format, the 16:9 that I mentioned, 2:1, or you can actually reverse this and you can have it to be either landscape or portrait. And again, we then get reverse versions of these. Let's set it back, and I kind of like the look of the 4:3. That looks quite nice. And then we can go ahead and we can customize even more. So if you want to create a totally customized version, you can click on custom and you can change what aspect ratio you want to use. So that's pretty cool. You can also choose some other options, the image size. So you can see we can choose from any of the pre-designed options that are part of WordPress or part of the theme. So thumbnail will be like the lowest quality. As you can see, it looks pretty terrible. But you'll probably find you can get away with something like medium, large, depending upon the size that you have it here, and that will then aid in the speed in which your pages will load because they're not downloading the full size version. You can also set the image width. Now, default will contain it to the same as we've got set up for the content, but we can set this to be wide, so it'll kind of push outside the boundaries in this example. And you see we get a smaller amount of content underneath, or we can come into full, and that will make a full width design. Now, obviously, if we do that, that takes up a huge amount of space. So we could easily come back in here and we can say one of the predefined options, set this to be 16 by 9, for example, and that now gives us a much nicer look. For this example, I want to set this to be 4 by 3, and I want this to be set up to be just set to wide. And that's kind of what I like. I like the look of that. So now we've got the basic page layout. But we still have even more options. This is just looking at the featured image. Do you want the image to be above or below the title? Well, let's say we want it below the title, and that pushes the title above, which looks better already. And we now have a nice flow to the look of this. Again, you can customize visibility based upon the different devices. And once you're happy, we can hop back out of here and we can easily come in now and start to customize more. Let's say, for example, we want to add a share box in. We can click it. That will now put a share box at the bottom, and you can see now we can share on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, or LinkedIn. But again, we've got the little pop-out arrow, so we can select it, and we can choose where we want them, how we want them to look, customize the design, change the colors, change any border widths, change the overall look, so we can set it to be this kind of look. Come into your design and say you can change your icon colors if you want to customize these to be specific colors, or you can come in and you can choose do you want the official colors, and that will now use the official colors for Facebook, Twitter, and so on. And again, you can come in and you can add in a module title. So you can say what you want there. You can choose what different networks you want. So we may want Reddit, we may want to have WhatsApp, and say email as well. Boom, we now got those inside there. You can set your links to no follow. You can adjust the icon sizes, spacing, adjust the alignment. There are so many options inside here to customize this, but I like the look of this. This is looking pretty cool already. Let's come down and say we want to use related posts. We'll select that, and now we have the related posts underneath so we can help people navigate around the content and hopefully keep them on our site longer. Again, you've got more options should you want to customize and tweak this, but we leave that as it is. We're going to disable comments because we said we don't want comments on you at all. And now we've customized our overall blog page design. So we're already on the road to create something a little bit more customized. Let's come back out of here. And now what we can do is we can come into our categories. So we come into categories, for example, we can customize the category look. Now, we haven't set things up yet to have a menu and so on. So let's deal with that first, and then we'll come back and take a look at how we customize this aspect. Before we do, though, let's go ahead, click on Publish, and check this out on the front end of our site to make sure we're happy with the way that everything looks. So let's select one of our posts. This will then take us in. You can see now this has picked up all the design aspects we've just set up and configured. Everything is laid out. There's our share options, which we can go ahead and share. We've also got our related posts, which we can easily jump around to. So let's choose another one. So we're already starting to create a nice looking design just using built-in functions inside the Bloxy theme. Now I'll come back into the post section because there's another thing I want to show you regarding posts. Now we've seen how we can add featured images and so on, but you'll notice that we've got categories listed inside here and everything is set up to be in the blog. And that's fine if you have a simple site and you don't mind having everything lumped into one particular location. However, it makes more sense to start to section things up into their related content types. It is really easy to do. Underneath the post section, you'll see we have categories and we have tags. Both work in a very similar fashion. However, for our example, we're going to use categories to organize the content. All we're going to do is click on categories, and you'll see blog is set up as our basic only starting point. But we want to add some more. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple of different categories in. So for example, we might say industrial. You can see we can then set this up to have a parent category. So if you want to have a hierarchy, in other words, we might have industrial, and inside industrial, we have other sections. We can do that here. We're going to keep everything at the top level. So everything is in its own category and no subsections. All we need to do is click on Add New Category, and you see industrial has now been added. Let's go ahead and add a couple more. So now we have a couple of categories set up. Now what we can do is we can go back to all our posts, and we can add those in to the relevant categories. So let's just go ahead and select a couple from here, click the option to edit and click apply. And now what we can do is we can go ahead and add those into the relevant categories. So we'll say this is art and theater and commercial, for example, click on update. And you'll see now they've been added in We're going to do a quick edit on this one, and we're going to say this isn't a blog, this is residential. Click on update. Quick edit this one. This is going to be industrial. And the final one, we're going to set that to be commercial. Click on update. So now we've created a couple of different categories. Let's add in a custom menu now that we can go ahead and reference those different categories. To do that, we're going to come to appearance and we'll come down to the menus option. Now we're going to create our first menu. So we're going to click at the top. I'm going to call this main menu. And we're going to say this is going to be header menu 1. We could also set this to be the mobile menu as well. So we have the same menu on both parts. Click create menu. And we've now created our menu. So now all we need to do is go ahead and add in the various different items we want. So for our example, we're going to open up, first of all, the category section, and there's all of our categories. So we're going to just say select all, add to menu, and that's now added all those in. But we want to do one other thing. We want to organize things. So let's come into custom links. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a custom link to group all of these together. So we're going to say, call this architecture type, for example, or just type, whatever you want it. So we're going to put a link text in, and above where it says URL, all we're going to do is we're going to put the little hash symbol in there, which creates what's called a null link. In other words, it doesn't click and go anywhere. It's just being used to have that top level. You'll see what I mean in a moment. Let's add that to our menu. Let's drag this up to the top. And all we're going to do is we're going to grab all these other ones underneath and we're going to push them over to the right a little bit. And you'll see what happens is they now get indented, so they become a sub-menu underneath the architecture type. So we could push all those over. If you want to get rid of anything, for example, we don't want the blog in this one, you can click the little drop-down arrow and we can click remove, and that will be taken out of that particular menu structure. And now what we're going to do is click on Save Menu, and we've now created our menu. And you see by default, it's actually picked this up for us. But if it hadn't, if you had more than one menu and you wanted to change it, the easiest way of doing this is simply come up to your navigation at the top, your header, click this little sort of arrow, and you'll see that will open things up for us, at which point you can see we've got select menu. Default is set inside there, but we could choose any of the menus that we've created. So we'll set this to be main menu so we know it's the right one, and boom, we now have our menu set up. But this leads me on nicely now to show you the header builder. This is where we can very easily start to create a customized header. Now by default, we've got the logo on the left-hand side, we've got a menu and a search on the right-hand side. And if we click on any of these items, you can easily drag these around into different points. So we could drag that over to the left-hand side, we could drag it into the middle if we wanted to, and you'll see it intuitively knows where you want to drop things, and it kind of updates accordingly. Let's put that back over the right-hand side. I like it over there. That's pretty good. You'll also notice that if we take a look at the left-hand section, we can customize the look of this. So at the moment, this is using type 1, but we could easily choose type 2, which will adjust things, and you can see when we hover over, we get a slightly different look. Type 3, again, we get a different look again, so we kind of get a solid background color. Or we've got type 4, which you can see gives us a kind of like animated effect. I like type 3 in this example. You can also adjust the item spacing and the item height, and we can adjust things like the collapsing and drop-down options and how this all works, whether it's hover or click. The hover effect you've got. There's a lot of different options inside here to get what you want. I'm going to leave those as they are in this example because I like the look of it. But if you want to adjust things like the drop-down options, you can adjust the color, the typography, the backgrounds, the dividers, shadows, and so on. There's so many options inside here. And then the design option, which allows you then to customize even more. Picking up the global colors like you've already seen, but you can change those if you want to, which I wouldn't recommend. But you can see we now have a nice looking navigation all set up. We can hover over, we can customize any of this if we want to, but we now have a nicer looking heading section. If you want to customize any other options, for example, the logo, you can click on it and that will allow you then to go ahead and select the logo you want to use. So instead of just having this plain old boring text, let's change it to the logo that we're going to use. We'll choose select logo. I'll go ahead and upload the logo I want to use. We'll give it some alt text and we'll click on select. And there's our logo. But you'll also notice we get the text underneath as well, which doesn't look particularly good. So what we need to do is choose the option to disable the title, and boom, there you go. That's now been updated. And again, if you want to adjust things, if the logo looks a little too big, you can adjust the size of that to make it a little smaller. We may say something like 35 pixels, for example, but you can easily click on the main row, for example, and we can customize this, set up the height of it. So at the moment, this is a little bit tall for my example. So let's just set this to something like 80. And you see that now shrinks the header down and make it a little bit more manageable. You could also have this to stick at the top. You can set it to boxed, full width, come into your design and customize things inside here. You can add a shadow in if you want to. So you can easily add any kind of shadow. Go ahead, enable it. You can see we now have a shadow at the top. You can adjust the offsets, the blur, the spread. All those kinds of good things can be adjusted inside here. And you can change the color. So if you wanted to make this one of your global colors, for example, and make it really ugly, you could do that. We'll set this back to be one of our normal standard colors, which looks a little nicer. And again, you can adjust things like the opacity of this should you want to. So I like the look of that. We now have a customized header. We've got a drop shadow on there. We've tweaked a few things. You can see we can add extra things inside here. You can see there's an abundance of options. Once we're happy with that, we can simply go ahead, we can click on publish, or we can say hide the builder, and we can come back out of here and we can go ahead and add anything in. So let's just say we want to add something into the top section. For example, we wanted to grab our socials, simply drag that, drop that in there. That will add that in, and then we can customize that if we want to. So we could easily come in, choose design, set our background color to be one of our darker colors, change our icons, choose the design on there, change the icon color, set those to be whiter, for example, and boom, we've now got a customized header section at the top. I don't want that on this. I'm going to delete that from there, and that gets rid of it. Really simple. And the same thing goes for the footer section. So if we come down to the footer, if you want to customize this, you can click on edit inside here, and all the same kind of options are available. We can choose the number of columns we want. We can add copyright info in there. You kind of get the idea of what you can do. I simply want to have a simple copyright information at the bottom. That's perfectly fine in this example, so I'm not going to worry about customizing it, but the whole process is exactly the same as the header like we've just seen. We're really on a roll now. We're starting to customize the look and feel of everything, and we're making this a little bit more personalized, but there's still so much more we can do. And let's go into our blog post section. And this allows us to customize how this section looks. Now, at the moment, you can see we've got this sort of grid layout, and that's pretty cool, but we can mix it up a little bit. We might want to have a really simple layout where we stack things one on top of another. Looks pretty cool. We might want to have a classic view. You can see this gives us a classic view. What I want, though, is I want this enhanced grid. I like the look of working with this kind of layout where we've got two larger featured kind of projects, then we've got 3 underneath, then we've got 2 underneath that, and so on. And we can choose the number of posts that we want to view. Now, because we're working with a kind of odd number, we need to make sure that we set this to be an odd number. So if we set this to be something like 9, or we set this to be something like 5, for example, that tidies things up nicely for us and also puts in the pagination underneath. Now we've set this up, you might be thinking, well, that's all we can do, but there's not. There is an awful lot more. Yes, you've got the design option to allow you to customize things like sidebar pagination and so on. You can even add in a card reveal effect, so we can click to enable that. And now when we scroll onto our page, these will animate on to give a little bit of movement in our design. Up to you if you like that kind of look or feel. For me, I think it's quite nice, so we're going to leave that. You'll also see we've got the option to come back into general, and we've got card options. Now, cards are basically the individual design elements you can see here. So we've got this sort of categories it's in, the title, the featured image, some text, and then we've got the website and the date that it was created and so on. But we're not restricted to having that layout or even that information. We can come into the card options, and now we can customize this in a manner of different ways. First of all, the easiest way is to choose from the 3 different card types. At the moment, we're using boxed, but we could choose simple, which is effectively the same kind of thing, but without the background color and the additional spacing. We can choose cover, which will put the content over the top of the actual image itself. I don't really like that look, so I'm going to go back to boxed. But underneath that, we've got the card elements. Now, the card elements, as I've just said, are all these different building block pieces that we have making up the cards. Now, what we can do is we can enable or disable these. We can click the little eye icon, and you see now the categories this is actually posted in are no longer visible. We can make them visible again if we want to. We can click on the little arrow on the right-hand side to open up even more options. So, for example, inside here, you can see we can choose things like enable author, publish date, update, the taxonomies, number of comments, and so on. But we'll leave that set to be taxonomies for now. But again, you can open these up and you can change this to be taxonomies or tags. You can choose the style, so you can have one of the buttons, or whether you want to set these to be little underlined links. It's entirely up to you. Let's set those back to be default. And let's say I don't want those on here, so I can just disable them. Let's say I want to take the title, but I want that to be under the featured image. I can simply drag that underneath the featured image, and it'll update, and now that content is in the position that I've set. You can see how easy this is and how intuitive it is. And you can open these up if you want to. You can adjust the actual word count inside any of these particular excerpts, for example, or you want the full post on here. You can customize the post meta that's being used underneath. It's all super simple, and you can easily duplicate various different parts of this and customize them. So for example, like we can enable the divider, we can pop a divider on there, and we can say we want to put that above the post meta, and now we've separated that out. We want to put the title back above the featured image. I like the look of that, and there we go, we've set that up. Open up your featured image, you can change the aspect ratio inside your, like we saw earlier on. So we can change this to be, again, 16:9, or a 2:1, or a 1:1.5 square. I think 16:9 looks quite nice. It's very similar to the aspect ratio the images were photographed in, but you can adjust them. You can set a hover effect if you want to, so when you hover over, you'll have a zoom effect. You can have a zoom in or zoom out. You kind of get the idea. There's a lot of different options you can choose to set up inside here. I'm going to take that off because I don't want animations and hover effects and so on. It all gets a little bit unwieldy. But that looks pretty nice as it is already. So now we've customized this page and we've got everything set up. So if we go ahead and take a look at our blog post, you can see that's being customized. We're pretty much going on a nice roll now where we're customizing all the different aspects. And like I say, all this is done inside Bloxy. Pretty cool. Now we're happy with the look of this. Let's go ahead and publish it just to make sure we've got those changes in place. And now let's take a quick look at what our site is looking like. There's our animation effect. You can see there's our shadow effect for our title at the top for our navigation. There's our navigation effect. We've got a nice built-in search function. We can search our content. You can see the animated. We've got the option to jump through to the various different subsections. We can open up and take a look at the post itself. There's our post, all customized with our share and related post options. It's looking pretty nice already, but there's still more we can do, and we're going to take a look at doing things like that in the next step, where we create our own customized homepage. So let's now take a look at building that custom homepage for our blog. What we're going to do is we're going to be using native Gutenberg functions, which is built directly into WordPress. We're not using any third-party tools for this, just in conjunction with the Bloxy theme. So let's go ahead and go into the pages section, and we're going to choose to add new. We'll give this a name. We'll call this homepage. Doesn't really matter too much. This is more for our reference than anything else. Once we've done that, we're now ready to start building the page itself. So if we click on this top left-hand button, and what we're going to do is we're going to search for what's called cover. So what we can do now is we can choose to insert a blank cover, or we could choose one of the predefined kind of layout ideas. We're going to start from scratch. So we'll just click on the cover option, and that will now insert that block into our blank page. Now we can go ahead and we can either upload an image, we can choose our media library, or we could use a featured image if we're using this with the post, which we're not. We can also choose the basic color scheme that we want to use. So for this example, let's use an image I've already uploaded. We'll click on the media library option. This will show us now all the images in our media library, and we're going to choose this first option because I kind of like the balance of this. We'll select it and click on the select option. That's now inserted that into our page for us. Now, if we click on this little list view, this document overview, this will show us all of the different elements or all of the different blocks that make up our page design. You can see there's our cover, and inside there we've got paragraph. Now, this is just where we can put some text, but we can insert basically any of the options that we have as part of Gutenberg. So images, buttons, text, those kinds of things. What we're going to do is we're going to keep this really simple and just drop in a little bit of text. We're going to say this blog is all about architectural inspiration. And you can see now I've got a little bit of text inserted into the actual cover itself. But now what we can do is we can style this, we can customize it, we can do basically most things we want with it. So if we look over on the right-hand side, you can see we have this block. And this is where we can control the various different aspects of any of the blocks. In this example, some text. If we click on the cover, you can see this gives us a different set of options, but again, still underneath the block option. So this is where you'll do all of the customization and tweaking to get this design exactly the way that you want it to be. So before we focus on the text, let's focus on the cover section. You can see we've got two tabs. This is our settings tab and this is our styles tab. We can switch between the two. We can set this to be a fixed background. We can have it to repeat if we had a simple pattern inside there. We can also adjust the focal point of the image itself. So you can see we can drag this little dot around and we can focus the actual attention. We can apply alt text to this if we want to. For example, we'll leave that because this is just basically decorative. Underneath advanced, you can see we can do a few things inside here. And this is probably a little bit more advanced than we want to cover in this particular tutorial. Now, if you hop over into the style section, this is where we can configure other aspects of this. Now you can see we've got the overlay. And you can see if we adjust the opacity on this, that will make the overlay effect lighter or darker. If we click on the overlay effect itself, we can now choose from colors or gradients. So we may want to set this to be something like red, for example, and you can see we can set that. This is using, again, those global colors as part of the Bloxy theme. Let's set this back to be the dark kind of color. That looks the best in this example. The same thing goes then for the dimensions. You can see we've got padding set inside here, but we can click to open this up and choose minimum height. We can enable margins, for example. So we can, again, open up more options. You'll also notice that we've got this kind of very basic set of options for our padding and so on. And we get a visual representation of what's actually happening on our design. Now, padding basically sits on the inside of the element, in this case, the cover. Margin sits on the outside. So if we start adjusting this, you'll see the margins will start to appear outside the image itself. So that's all you need to know with those. Then we've got these two options. If you don't want to use these kind of predefined sizes, which I would generally recommend, they will do the job for you because they'll scale nicely. However, if you don't want to, you can simply go ahead and click on this little setting option and you can set custom values inside here on a pixel value or any of the other options we have available. You can also unlink all four sides. So currently, if we make a change to this, let's just set this back, you'll see all four sides are being affected by this alteration. That many times you don't want that to be the case. So we can choose this little chain link to unlink those, and now all four sides are completely independent. So if I want to add some padding to the top, I can do that. You can see that now adds padding to the top section, but the other three sides remain totally unaffected. For this example, we're going to leave those as they are. I don't want to worry too much about that because we simply just have some basic placed text in there. But you can, if you want to, adjust it. What we do want to do, though, is adjust the minimum height of the actual cover itself. So again, we can choose from things like percentages, pixels, and so on. Keeping this simple, we're going to work with pixel values. So we're going to say for this example, we want to set this to be something like 600 pixels high, and that gives us a nice hero section for the top of our homepage. Now, on top of that, we can easily set some other values inside here. If we come over when we've got this selected, you'll see we get this little pop-up menu. This allows us to change various different aspects of this. You can click on the three dots on the right-hand side and you can see we can copy it, we can duplicate it, and so on. We can replace the image. So if we clicked on replace, that will allow us to open the media library, upload, and so on. So the same we saw at the beginning, inserting the actual block into the design itself. And we can also go ahead and we can do things like adjust things like apply a duotone filter to this if we wanted to make it kind of funky by making this a duotone effect. And you see we've got a range of pre-designed options, and we can always customize these if we want to. Let's take that off though. I prefer the actual overall image. We can adjust things like the full height options. We can adjust the content position. Most of these options are still available on the right-hand side, but this is a quick way of accessing them. We can also set how we want this to be aligned. So if we click on this, you can see this is going to be none. In other words, it'll pick up the default that the theme sets. But we can set this to be wide, full width, aligning things to the left, right, or center. We're going to set this to be full width. So it'll go the full width of our overall page. And that's basically all we want to do. Now, if we click on the paragraph, this will allow us to select the text. And again, you see we have the same pop-up option, but we have different options inside here. This is what's called context sensitive. Depending upon what you choose, will display different options. There will be some overlap. For example, we click on the three dots on the right-hand side, and you can see we've got those same options to duplicate, copy, and so on. However, we've got things like highlighting, inline code, subscripts, and so on. We can set a link on here. We can set it to bold, italic, adjust the alignment, for example. Center makes most sense in this example. We can also go ahead and change what this block is. Currently, this is set to paragraph, but we can click on this and change this to be a heading. In this example, a heading makes more sense. So let's choose heading from here. And again, you see we get similar options. We'll change the heading in this example to be H1 because this is the primary heading on our page. So it makes sense for this to be the H1, heading 1, the most important heading on the page. And you should only ever have one heading 1 on any given page, just so you know that. So now we set the basic options up, we can go ahead now over onto the right-hand side and we can start to customize this heading. So for example, we click on the text option. We can change the color if we wanted to, but white is perfectly fine. You can change a background, you can apply a link. And if we click on the three dots, you can see those options are available. So if we never want to apply a link, we can click and you could always remove it. And the typography, like we saw earlier on, we can click the three dots and inside here we've got more options. So things like decoration, letter spacing and so on. So we click on letter spacing, click on any of these, you can set those up to be displayed. So what we're going to do is we're going to set things up to be the size that we want and the styling and so on. So we have these basic small, medium, large and XL. So much the same as we saw with the padding and the margins, these are global settings that work very well, but you can easily override them. You can choose these options and you'll see that'll update in real time on the page. And you can click on the little settings option to customize this completely. So you can insert a value inside here. Again, you can change those values over from pixels to other options, or you can use the sliding scale to increase the size of this. Let's set it to something like 75. Then the appearance allows us to choose the weight. In other words, how thick or how heavyweight the font is. For this, we're going to try something quite light. Again, you can adjust things like letter spacing, so you may want to adjust this. So you can see we can set larger letter spacing inside each of the letters. I'm going to leave it to the default, that looks perfectly fine. And then we've got the letter case, so we can have things to be as they are. We can set everything to be capitals, we can set everything to be lowercase, or we can capitalize the beginning of every single word. For this example, I want everything to be uppercase. And you have additional options on these, like things like dimensions. And again, we've got that advanced options where we can do things like add CSS classes and so on. We're not going to worry about those options though. So we've now created this lovely looking hero section for our page. The next thing I want to do is put posts underneath it that are being pulled from our blog. Now, this is something we can use one of the options inside the free version of Bloxy, and this is what's called a shortcode. And a shortcode allows us to very easily add in custom parts of our design into any page that we create that falls outside building it inside Bloxy itself. And that's what we're going to cover in the next section. Now, one of the things I really like about working with Bloxy is the ability to use shortcodes. Now, these are little simple code snippets that allow us to insert content into any of our pages, and that's exactly what we're going to do in this video. So don't be put off by this thinking you need to understand some kind of HTML or any of that kind of stuff. You don't. It's incredibly simple. I'll link to the documentation so you can take a look for yourself, but we're going to keep this really, really simple. We want to insert our normal posts into our homepage. These will be the most recent posts. We're not going to worry about filtering things and all that kind of stuff, but you can do it if you want to. All we're going to do is create a really simple post. So this is the shortcode we're going to use. You can see that's basically it. Bloxy_posts inside square brackets. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that. We're going to head over to our new homepage and we're going to just come into our section and we're going to click underneath and we're going to click this little plus. And we're going to search for shortcode. We'll click to insert a shortcode, and that insert the shortcode block. All we need to do now is go ahead and paste in that little bit of code we copied from the Bloxy documentation. So we'll just do Control or Command V, we'll paste that in, and that's basically all we need to do right now. So if we go ahead and save our draft, we can preview this, and this is where we are right now. You can see this has picked up our design. We've got our posts inside here, we've got our hero section. We do have a couple of things we need to address. But as you can see, we're already creating something more unique. Now at the moment, this is going to display a bunch of posts and we can control exactly how many are displayed. So just to make sure everything is set up the way that we need, we're going to be using what's called the limit function. Now this, again, sounds complicated, but it really isn't. All we're going to do is we're going to hop back into our page. We're going to click inside our shortcode, and after the S of posts and before that little square bracket, we're going to put a space in. We're going to type the word limit. We're going to put an equal sign in, and we're going to open up the quote marks, and we're going to put 5, and we're going to close those quote marks. That is it. All that's going to do is say limit the posts to only display 5. Okay, so there's the first part of this done. Now with the shortcode selected, we can go ahead and we can start to do some other things. So first of all, we want to make sure that these things don't sit flush against each other. So if we take a look at our example, you'll see everything is sitting right up against each other. Let's deal with that. Come back to our page, select our cover, and like we saw earlier, we're going to come into the option for styles. We're going to come down to our margins, and we're simply going to unlink these, and we're going to come to the bottom margin and we're just going to insert some space inside there. Let's go for the full 6 on there, and that gives us a nice bit of space in. So again, let's just save our draft and preview, and now we have a nice bit of space between our hero section at the top and our actual posts underneath. Now the next thing you'll notice is we've got this homepage set at the top. We actually don't really want that. So we're going to come back into our page. This time over on the right hand side, right at the top, you'll see we've got this little Bloxy logo symbol. If we click on that, that allows us to customize the actual page settings. So now we can use the settings from the Bloxy theme to control just this page. Come to the page title at the top, and we're going to say disabled. That will now get rid of the title at the top, which is homepage. Even though we still see it inside here, it has been removed. So again, let me just go ahead, save this, preview our page, and you see that homepage has now gone. The problem is we've got a bit of a space at the top, and how do we get rid of that? Pretty simple and straightforward. So let's do that next. Coming back into our page, you can see we're still on the settings. If we scroll down, we've got this option called Content Area Vertical Spacing. Click on Custom, and this allows us to customize the spacing above and below our content. And all we're going to do is choose the option to say only bottom. So in other words, any spacing at the top will be removed. We'll choose that option. You'll see nothing really happens inside here, but just to show you, we'll save our draft, refresh our page, and as you can see, now everything sits flush up against our top section, and everything now looks nice and laid out the way that we want. So we've now created our custom homepage. The problem is, if we take a look at our site, it doesn't show up. So let's go back and take a look. So here's our site, and there's our homepage, still showing the normal blog page. So how do we deal with that? Again, it's incredibly simple. We'll go back into WordPress. We've finished with this page now, so we can click on Publish to make sure it's saved. We'll click Publish again. Then we're going to click on the WordPress icon in the top left-hand corner to come back out. There's our homepage, and all we need to do is come into Settings and into Reading, and from there you see your homepage displays, and by default it says your latest posts. We don't want that. We're going to click on a static page. We'll select it, and under Homepage we're going to click the drop down and choose the homepage we just created and hit Save Changes. We've now assigned that custom page to our homepage on our website. So now if we come back into our site and refresh that page, there's our custom homepage with our hero section at the top, our posts underneath, our animation effects, and everything else is now laid out the way that we want it to be laid out, and we've customized it. Now the other thing we want to do before we finish this section out is, at the moment we can't get back to the homepage without clicking on the actual logo, and not everybody knows you can click the logo to go back to the homepage. So let's address that. Again, we're going to come back into the dashboard and into Appearance and Menus. And from there, you can see the homepage is now selected. If we click on View All, you can see homepage is selected for our pages, and we'll click on that option and say Add to Menu. We'll reposition that at the top. We'll click to open this up, and we can edit that label, and we'll just simply say Home, close that down, and hit Save Menu. Hop back over to our site, refresh, and there's our homepage. And then we can still go into our different subsections for commercial, art and theatre, and so on. Now, while we're in one of these subsections, you'll notice something. We don't have that 2x2 and then that 3x3 underneath. So what's going on there? Let me show you. We come back in, and this time we're going to go into our customizer one more time. Now inside our customizer, we've gone ahead and we've customized the option for blog posts. You can see we've set that up. We've also gone ahead and customized the actual look for the individual post, but we haven't set it up for categories. So if we open up the categories option, this is still set to be grid. So if we come, choose commercial, so we can see what we're doing, you can see this is going to show us, and all we need to do is click on the enhanced grid option, and that will now pick up that design style. So everything is now full continuity throughout the entire design. So what we're going to do is click on Publish, and we've now set things up to show exactly what we want. And again, we can still come in and customize these. We can customize the number of posts. So we'll set that to be 5 in this example. We can customize the card options to make sure everything looks exactly the same. So all these options are available. I'm not going to go through it in this particular section because you've already seen how to do it, and it's just repeating the exact same process. So now we've built our site, the next thing I want to quickly check out is how well optimized this is. So we're going to test this out on PageSpeed Insights, which is Google, and we're going to test it out on GTmetrix. So we're going to jump into PageSpeed Insights, and we're simply going to go ahead and paste in the URL for our site and click on Analyze. And I'll hop over to GTmetrix and do exactly the same thing. So you can see Click on Analyze, and we're going to let those go ahead now and analyze our site for both mobile and desktop and see what kind of speed results we get. Okay, so you've got the results back from PageSpeed Insights, and bearing in mind, this is simply using the Lightspeed Speed Cache, Bloxy, alongside Hostinger's hosting account. And as you can see, we're getting 100 on performance on mobile, 97 for accessibility, so there's a little bit of work we could do there. Best practices 100%, and SEO, which we haven't actually even touched yet, is still giving us 93. So that's pretty solid results to start off with. Hopping over to desktop, you can see again we get very similar results. Hopping over to GT metrics, and you can see we're getting 100 for performance and 98 for structure, so pretty solid. And if we take a look at what's called the LCP, or largest contentful paint, that's 292 milliseconds. And all that really means is, how long does it take before content starts to appear on the site? In other words, that's about 1/3 of a second. And if we take a look underneath, you can see we get a visualization of how fast this actually is. And underneath, it gives us some basic things that we may want to do to optimize even further. But to be honest, these results are incredibly good straight out of the box, and I think even with a little bit of tweaking, we're only going to eke out a 1% at most improvement over what we have right now. So we've got a great fast loading site. It's all set up. There's still so much more we could do though. So there we go. We now have built a fast loading blog site. We set up hosting, backups, SSL, bought a domain, installed our software, set everything up, and customized things to the way that we want. But what else could you actually do to take things forward? There's so many different ways in which you can enhance what we have here. I don't want to go into it in this video because I wanted to show you how to build this. We could cover the video for the next 3 hours with all the different things you could do. So you're going to want to take a look at installing some kind of SEO and some kind of security. But other than that, the site is so well optimized to get you up and running, to be able to start adding content and start ranking that content, that you should have everything you need to get started. Now, don't forget, all the links are in the description below, including that discount code for Hostinger if you want to use their hosting services like I've done in this video. As always, if you've got any comments, questions, or feedback, drop this in the comment section down below. My name is Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.